Chasing Waterfalls, a Hallmark Channel original movie that premiered on March 20th, 2021, starring Cindy Busby and Christopher Russell. First we meet Amy, the city-dwelling wannabe photographer who decides to shoot her shot and beg her boss for a waterfall spread for their online travel magazine when the regular photographer breaks their leg. For some reason the boss says yes, and then Amy is off to the woods. On her first day there, she decides to hike to the first waterfall and proceeds to get lost multiple times on a well-marked, well-traveled trail with a map, and after having received directions at the reception desk, while on trail, and on her way back. Frankly, it was embarrassing and I was embarrassed for her. While at the waterfall, she runs into Mark, the strapping local trail guide, and his precocious daughter Kyra. Because in Hallmark Channel movies, the children are always precocious and a little annoying. Mark proceeds to make fun of her outfit, including her footwear. So as soon as they get to the bottom of the mountain, he takes her to the lodge outfitter where he works to get her fitted with some proper footwear. We know that they're serious hiking boots because they're hella ugly. Can't quite follow the logic that Mark thinks her sneakers are inappropriate, but brand new, never worn hiking boots are the best footwear for a lot of miles on rough terrain. Because all I can imagine is blisters. My bet is that Mark's making a pretty commission off the sale of those boots. While they're in the store, Amy convinces Mark to take her hiking the next day on his day off. Wow, Mark is a really stand-up guy. My boss asked me to work on my day off this week, and I believe my response was, oh, hell no. Something tells me I'm not exactly Hallmark Channel movie material. Just a guess. While we're at the store, we also meet Tara, a woman who is clearly hardcore into Mark. She is practically throwing herself at him, whereas Mark is either too dumb to notice or he knows and has chosen not to confront her and be upfront about it and just say, hey, I'm not interested. So maybe Mark is not a stand-up guy after all. So then Mark and Amy and Kyra go to the woods the next day to find the second waterfall and have such stimulating conversations as the personality waterfalls. Specifically, Little Betsy, the waterfall they're visiting. Apparently Little Betsy's personality is that she's jealous the larger and easier to get to waterfalls get more attention than her. That's right, they just called this waterfall bitter and resentful. Poor little Betsy. After the hike, they go to a party at the lodge where Mark's friend proceeds to openly objectify Amy, which was super weird and awkward. Could have been cut. Kyra also has a crush on a little boy there and proceeds to turn to Amy, the woman she met yesterday, for advice, because we all know that's how 11-year-olds really behave. They don't text their friends, no, they ask strange women. During all of this, Mark asks Amy if she wants to go on a group hike that he's leading tomorrow. And we're just going to overlook the plot gap where literally the day before or 2 days before he had said that all the group hikes were full for the next few months. So we'll pretend that didn't happen. She, of course, says yes, and the next day they go hiking to a third waterfall. There was a scene that involved some sort of rock climbing business. It was long. I think it was supposed to show emotional growth or something. I simply found it boring, and I cannot remember anything that was said. When they get to the waterfall, we have this beautiful shot of Amy and Mark sitting close together, shoulder to shoulder, and having a discussion. But then the camera pans out, and we see, oh, the rock they're sitting on is in fact enormous. There is enough space for about 100 people, so them practically in each other's laps suddenly now looks silly. However, the waterfall looked fabulous. I mean, super fabulous. So fabulous, I went to Google to find out where this film was shot, because I thought that falls needs to be on my bucket list. And it is now. Gorgeous. So after they return from the hike, Mark invites Amy to a local photo gallery where they sit to admire the photographs by a local photographer who also shoots the waterfalls. Amy proceeds to talk about how much they suck. Okay, Amy, tell us how you really feel. Don't hold back, even though the artist might literally be standing nearby. Later, they go on a boat ride on a lake, where we learn from Mark that he did in fact date Tara. Only a few dates, but it was clear to him that they were never going to be anything more than friends, and he clearly communicated that to Tara and said that he thinks she's not willing to give up. Okay, Mark, you did the grown-up thing, told her you weren't interested, and now she's continuing to pursue you. All right, you're back to being a stand-up guy, and Tara needs to move on. That night, Amy is talking to her friend on the phone and tells her how she is falling madly in love with Mark. By my calculation, it's been 3 days. Girl, slow your roll. On day 4, Mark takes Amy to the hardest waterfall to find. Well, I should say the second hardest waterfall to find. There is a mythical waterfall that everyone says is just imaginary, except Mark has seen it, but doesn't know how to find it again. So we're going to the hardest to find waterfall that people know the directions to. But it's going to take them 2 days, so they're going to camp out overnight. Amy shows up, and she's wearing jeans. Truth, I'm a hiker. And I can tell you for a fact, she would have done better in her original sneakers and not jeans. Mark, Mr. You can't wear that in the woods, is going to let her hike for 2 days in jeans? Do you know how much those things chafe? In fact, their whole fashion outfits were a little bit ridiculous, but we're going to let that pass. While they're hiking there, Mark wants the location of this waterfall to remain secret. So periodically throughout the trip, he'll stop her and just spin her around a few times. Does he do this at intersections in order to disorient her? No. He does this in the middle of a single trail where there's only one direction to go. However, as we've already established, Amy can't even find her way in a straight line. So not only is this method probably effective, it's also unnecessary because she would never be able to find this waterfall again, even if she tried. That night they set up camp, and Mark presents her with a gift. It is a compass. And he says because it'll always point her back to him. That's when I learned his last name was North, and this was super cheesy. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of loved it. I might even have welled up a little bit. The next morning, Mark takes Amy to the waterfall, and just before they get there, he blindfolds her. And she's like, "Isn't this dangerous?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah. There are roots and rocks and cliffs. You're just asking to die." And now I'm starting to think that maybe Mark is actually a serial killer who likes to torture his victims in advance. So between the new boots and the blisters, the jeans and the chafing, and now the blindfold, and her accidentally falling off a cliff, I got my eyes on you, Mark. They get to the waterfall. Amy takes some photographs. They splash in the water. Everything's great. They get back. She submits the photos to her boss with the stipulation that they cannot publish the location of the waterfall because she promised Mark, she promised everybody that would remain secret. Of course, her camera has GPS, and thus begins what my mother always calls, and is in every Hallmark movie, the big misunderstanding. Because naturally, even though she told them not to publish the location, guess what they do? Publish the location. And naturally, everyone at the lodge, including Mark, is convinced she did it on purpose because she's ambitious and doesn't care about anybody but herself. Amy, of course, is disheartened and is leaving that day. But just as she's getting into the car, she thinks, "No, I have to explain myself to Mark," who of course is leading a tour to a waterfall, one she'd already been to, but let's be honest, we know she can't find it again. And she decides she's going to go find him in the woods on her own as someone who gets lost in a paper bag. This is how people die, but this is a Hallmark movie. So of course, she gets lost, loses her map, but along the way finds the marker to the secret mythical waterfall and uses the compass that Mark gave her to find it. Mark, when he gets back, realizing she's been gone all day, her car's still in the parking lot, goes after her. And even though there's thousands of miles of woods and mountains where she could be, he naturally follows exactly the path she wandered onto while lost and ends up exactly where she is. So realistic. I completely believe it. Amy goes to tell him how she really didn't do it. It was an accident. Her boss published it and she didn't want them to. But Mark is like, "No, I understand. I already knew in my heart that's not something that you could do." And they make up and they have their first kiss and the camera pans out with the waterfall in the background. And let's be honest, it was beautiful. And that is Chasing Waterfalls. In terms of ranking, I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. There was some chemistry between the leads, at least enough that when they kissed, I was not repulsed. And while the plot was basic and convenient and, let's be honest, extremely dangerous, the shots of the waterfalls were spectacular. I definitely want to go there. And that was my review on Chasing Waterfalls. Thank you for watching. And if you have your own opinion on this movie and exactly what you thought of the characters and the plot, please put in the comments down below. Yeah, so I learned some pretty shocking news when I looked up where all these waterfalls are located. Little Betsy, the one who is bitter because she's not as big as the other waterfalls, she's 1,100 feet tall. And in fact, the largest waterfall that they filmed at by several hundred feet. They only showed like a small fraction of her. I can't believe they did her dirty like that. Calling her bitter? Please. She's clearly a queen, and she knows it. Shameful. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Please keep to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to.